Welcome to the Heart of Soul podcast, an exploration of who you are, what you are, and why you are, offering new ways to investigate age-old questions at the heart of you. Hi, it's Joseph, and thanks for listening to the Heart of Soul podcast. First thing, I did move the podcast to Substack. Some of you know what that means, and some of you won't, and that's okay. While it's still distributed to all the major podcast hosts, the best way to enjoy the Heart of Soul is to become a member. And you can do that at the special link, which is going to a Substack page, but the link is content.clearandopen.com. Again, that's content.clearandopen.com. Both of my podcasts are now there. If you didn't know about my other one, which I don't update much, but there's a lot there. Members get early releases, access to the community chat where you can comment and ask questions about episodes. And of course, you get access to the second Sunday Zoom event where anything can happen. And the next second Sunday is June 8th, 2025. You've got until end of day Friday before that to become a member if you want to join us. It's $5 a month, which is quite a bit less than the last latte I bought. I usually buy a couple of those a year until I realize how expensive they are and that they're not worth it. So all of that aside, today is part 2 of our series on Yin-in-Service, which is taking the EBE community by storm and doing a lot of good out there, I'm proud to say. It's going over quite well, although in some challenging ways, but that's how EBE works. You can find the link to the white paper in the show notes. I did put it in the last one, but I did it after I read the intro, so I didn't actually point to it. It's been a little bit, it's been a freight train, so apologies for my disorganization. I'm getting things together here. Highly suggest you read it. Again, the white paper is in the show notes, and you can find it on the Substack page at content.clearandopen.com as well. Stace and I continue to discuss the symptoms today, and I can tell you we've already recorded parts 3, 4, and 5 on this subject, and there will be at least a 6th, so stay tuned, and I will be releasing those early for members only. Thanks so much for listening, and if you're on YouTube, for watching. Well, greetings and welcome forward, everybody. Wow, I remember the old thing I used to say. I didn't know if I would. Hi, Stace.
Hey.
So we are gathered here today to continue with part 2 of an unknown number of parts on the subject of paradigmatic entropy in Yin-in-Service. And it was Stace's idea, thank God, because I didn't know what to do today, to go through some of the symptoms and do some explication and exemplification. That's a cool word.
Nice.
It's like buddies. Amplification, but exemplification. Right. I hope I remember that. We're going to do some exemplification of, I can't say it without laughing, it's a funny word, of what Yin-in-Service looks like, because that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's, I think, where people can connect it to themselves. And I don't remember if we talked last time. I don't remember what we talked about last time at all, actually. But did we talk about what I ended up calling the markers, the Enneagram types, and the soul species? We didn't do that.
A soul species.
We did.
Yeah. But,
that might be useful too.
Yeah, you bet.
So let me just briefly speak about that, and then we'll go into the symptoms.
Perfect.
So the who is at risk for Yin-in-Service? It sounds like, who is at risk for sexually transmitted diseases? Who is at risk for Yin-in-Service? So we did talk about Michaelites as being pure yin, and mostly angel souls are the ones who do EBE, so that's generally the only thing to be cognizant of there. There are 3 Enneagram types that in the world of Enneagram are referred to as the other base types. Those are 2s, 6s, and 9s. Most of the time 6s don't do EBE because, well, that's a whole other story, but
right.
Rabbit hole unchosen. 2s and 9s, they're the most yin types, and 2s gain identity by serving other, and 9s gain identity by borrowing self. They're very other based, so those are markers for potential Yin-in-Service. being a woman, unfortunately, is a marker for Yin-in-Service. And I specifically say in the treatise that I wrote, the way to think about that is it can't count as your first one, but it does count as your second one. If you already have one of these markers, then being a woman will tip you into it likely. But just being a woman doesn't mean you're doing Yin-in-Service. That felt like a way to not patriarchalize this whole thing, because women are 2/3 yin, as said. I believe it was, I can't remember if it was you or Eric who brought up the cultural conditioning thing, but that wasn't my idea. Cultural conditioning that is other based. That's Indian, Eastern, a lot of Latin American. I mean, really, not Europe and not the United States, but basically everywhere else is quite collectivistic.
Yes, exactly.
Soviet Russia conditioning I've seen, that's really intensely other based. That adds a sort of layer of we-spacerness, if you will.
Right, but the Russian ones, just as a star on that, the Russians then overcompensate with narcissism to that particular truth. They are so unmovable.
The country is a we ate. That culture.
So there you go.
Collectivistic, but headstrong.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I believe we talked last time about spacer types. I think that one's kind of obvious. This is a we spacer thing, not a me spacer thing. And one other thing is the severity of childhood, specifically or sort of more rigorously, the degree to which one was a true victim as a child. So sexual abuse and physical abuse for sure. Because that's so severe and very difficult to heal from that it usually leaves scars that are there forever. But adoption, I think, depending on the circumstances, can do that. Growing up in a literal war zone, like in Israel or Africa somewhere, or Bosnia, etc., that will do it. There's just that level of victimhood of true victimhood is so strong. I've seen in severe cases where it's like there's two kinds of EBE facilitants: those who heal the true victim and stop significantly playing victim except in subtle ways, and then people whose childhoods were so horrific that becomes an onerous, possibly impossible task.
Yeah, the self-identification.
Yeah,
honestly, in one way, is etched so deep. It's hard to get out of it.
So I believe those are, let me just look at my list here. Oh, and then there's one other that I didn't mention. I don't remember if we talked about last time. Ability to paradigmatically process reality, which I'm shorthanding as PP, and critical thinking ability. So mental acuity matters because part of the usefulness of the mental body is to have a mental meta when we're really triggered. And so even if we can't feel our way through to being more mature, sometimes the mind can be like, well, I mean, it happens every day. Hey, maybe I won't run that guy off the road who just cut me off. That's the mind helping you not fuse to a passing feeling. So
it's not unresourceful in that way.
So those, I'm calling those all markers. And what I'm saying is that people with 2 markers are very likely doing Yin-in-Service, and people with 3 of those markers or more may have a fatal level of Yin-in-Service that is unworkable. So until we come up with some really cool stuff to address it, perhaps. I don't know.
Okay.
So
great. That's it. Go ahead. Yeah.
So go ahead. That's what I have for markers and on to symptoms. But anything you want to say before we dive into that?
Yeah. The 2 ways to come at this whole topic is the content of it or the lack of context of it. In other words, metaphysics, there's a lack of metaphysical rigor in Yin-in-Service folks, and that's just looking at it from the other side. We talked about that last time, I think, a bit. But what's really interesting here is that when metaphysics are yang, and the metaphysics, as we talked last time, and you said some beautiful things about it, how both the love or emotive-based side and the metaphysical side are equally important. In fact, they are critically need to go hand in hand to process life paradigmatically.
Mm-hmm.
You can't think critically in the most effective way, and you can't think or process reality paradigmatically without metaphysics. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind here, because we're going to talk about the content, the experiential content here today, maybe. And I just want to put that overlay on how important metaphysics are. And in that sense, I'd like to start with one that I didn't see on the list.
Which?
I don't like labels.
Oh, yes. I will add that to the document. Mm-hmm.
This is a classic one where the utterer of such a thing is going to slime over or fog over a distinction in any experience that can be easily seen as a boundary issue that is not being held cleanly. Mm-hmm. If someone says, well, the most obvious example, did you, if I was a facilitator and I was teaching a class on facilitation, let's say, and I said, okay, you've got a Gabrielite angel, and it's early on in work with Gabrielite angels to help them see what a strong-edged, especially a me-spacer Gabrielite, what kind of way they're going to be processing reality that'll key exactly what the path that EBE would take them through. So how soon do you think you should pass that on, reflect that in the person's facilitation?
That they're a me-spacer and or a Gabrielite, or both?
Both. Mm-hmm. A me Gabrielite. Mm-hmm. That would be, for me, if I was facilitating, that would happen in the first 3 months for sure. I
was going to say... Maybe 8 to 10 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you have boundary issues in a Yin-in-Service, you're apt to say, I don't like labels, so I'm just going to go flow with the way the things go flowy. And that's one part of good facilitation, emergency. It emerges. But if you don't have the path circumscribed by the metaphysics of identity, in this case EBE, you're likely to just let the process run your facilitation instead of the facilitator running the facilitation.
With the truth and service of meeting the client, the facilitant, where they are and exactly. What is emerging. And that's not what EBE is. That's what lots of forms of talk therapy are. That's humanistic psychology. They have the answers. Yes. You ask questions. We get to what we get to when it arises. EBE is far more proactive than that.
And yeah, exactly.
And that's what's tricky, because if you're standing 100 feet away, EBE can look like therapy, because you're talking about stuff and you're talking about feelings and you're talking about childhood, but it's not. And that's, I think, a good place to start. We were talking about this recently, about spacer type and when to tell facilitants that. You and I both, and we'd never talked about it before, we both saw that as like, well, that would be part of the history.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
So like the first few sessions where you take the history of the facilitant, that's a really good place to teach what spacer types are and why they are which one of them that they are. Mm-hmm. That's the golden opportunity to combine the metaphysics with the experience. So why wouldn't you do it? Yeah. Oh, well, because I don't like labels.
You? Yeah. It's there's never me space and we space has never been articulated before. It just is. It's a first in our paradigmatic processing paradigms here. That about me space and we space, and it is really important because they process reality diametrically opposed to each other. And so without that up front, you're going to lose, you'll do a windy path through facilitation with someone when it could go a lot more directly. The clients, where they are at their speed, has to be challenged. It's, like you said, it's not humanistic psychology. We're proactive, and if they've signed up for it, they need to know that it's proactive. It's not about shoving anything down people's throats. It's being with love and respect, but with firmness of purpose.
Yeah.
Not you don't have to affirm energy with the person. You affirm with the metaphysics. And so without that, I don't. If you go with spacers, is a really good example of it too. Not just soul species. The spacer type will give clear flags all along the path as reference points. It'll be really important for a facilitator to pay attention to.
Yeah, it also would, I mean, just in that moment, if you take 10 minutes to explain the difference between me and we spacers, or refer them to our podcast on the subject, there's at least 2 or 3 where we've done it for facilitators in that way. It gives the facilitant immediate doubt space that they can have with them forever, right? If they're a we spacer, they can look for caretaking and other yin-in-service tendencies, and if they're a me spacer, they can look for judgment dynamics and not go making their truth more important than relating or whatever. And like those, like you said, those are 2 very different paths of EBE. Why wouldn't you want the facilitant to know what that is in the very beginning? And before I forget, the I don't like labels thing is a really good example of what I call symbolic language, because it doesn't mean what it says, right? It's not like I don't like black licorice. I don't like labels. I don't like labels that's not what it means. What you really mean if you say that is something like, it depends, you'd have to dig, but it means something like, I find rigorous conceptualization to be inhibitive to providing people with some kind of specific experience. That's how you decode that.
Yeah, exactly.
But people don't talk like that. So thinking processing paradigmatically means when someone says, I don't like labels, your first reaction is bullshit.
Yeah.
That means nothing. And then you have to figure out what it actually does mean.
Yeah.
And that might be what it means. Like, it doesn't mean I don't like vanilla. It's like when people say, I don't like a politician, like, you liking them or not has nothing to do with anything. Have you hung out with them? And you'd rather not have a beer with them? You mean you don't like their policies? Okay, which one? You don't like what? Their soul species? What are you talking about?
I don't like their energy.
Yeah.
You got to specify.
And then why, right? Because if you leave the person with that symbolic vague language, then they never have to look at what is behind that are, inevitably assumptions and paradigmatic assumptions and then emotion as well. I don't like Kamala Harris. Well, there could be a million reasons why. Do you even know, or do you just not like them and you're going with that? It's kind of important. So if you don't like labels, you better be able to explicate why.
A beautiful example of semantics in service.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because every word you say is a label. So do you not like words?
Well, just by saying I don't like labels, you're broadcasting to people phonically that you like labels, because you're using labels and saying I don't like labels.
Right. So if you don't like labels, in integrity, you should become a Zen monk or a nun and never speak again.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be your best embodiment of that. And even that wouldn't actually be doing that, but that would be in integrity. And people have done that. So,
and just there, what Joseph and I just did, I can already feel people possibly, when they listen to this podcast, oh, you guys, your intellectuality goes to such small boxes. No, it's got the other way.
Yeah, it's not small, actually.
It's meta. Without metaphysics, you can't distinguish between content and context. And without that, you're going to be sloppy, not only in your communications, but the way you organize your communications and the way you relate to your communications.
Yeah.
So,
and one more thing,
it's really complex.
It's very complex, and it's not small. I know, because I'm losing the ability to go small, and my ability to paradigmatically process only gets better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
One more thing about the symbolic language thing. If you really listen for cliche symbols, vague metaphors that aren't explicated, terms you've heard before, like, when people throw around like, when I work with business clients, I'm always on them about like excellent customer satisfaction. I'm like, yeah, you can't use those words anymore, because every one of your employees is going to make up a different interpretation of that. It's cliche. And I learned this as an English major in college when I had a professor who was brutal with cliche and would put a line through every single word or sentence in what you wrote and would write cliche. And it's just like, if it's well worn or has been heard before, then it's a missed opportunity to be clear. So if you start to listen through this lens, you'll know you're doing it when you discover that most of the time people are talking in complete bullshit. At least every minute they'll use, because that's what the protector does. It obfuscates, and vague language is a really great way to do that. I think we're saying the same thing. Let's agree to disagree. Well, it's sort of like this. And all of this is about creating a false connection that actually isn't there. So both people can shake hands and feel good about themselves and not have to look at actually how they disagree dramatically.
Yeah.
And so if you start really listening through this lens and see if you can rigorously get, like, is the person really meaning what they're saying? And do you actually understand what they mean? And that's where Stace and I's touches of autism are really useful, because we're both very literal that way. And so when someone uses a metaphor, if it's not very good or they don't explain what it means, I don't know what they're talking about. That's my reaction. And then that elicits curiosity. So if someone says, like, we really want to step up to the plate and hit this one out of the park, I don't know what they're talking about. And probably neither do they.
So true. And I just, while you were talking, I just got something. Maybe you can corroborate this. I think what may make people, what may help people to not want to go further in EBE after hearing a presentation, for example, I just got that identity is virtually cliche free.
Yeah.
It can't be cliche because it's offering entirely new assumptions about reality. So you can't use, that's why Joseph's example, exemplification. I had to make up words to be able to capture it, because to not be sucked into cliche kind of symbolic language. So that's why people, I don't get what they're saying. But there's a good reason, because we're not using culturally conditioned social contact language.
Yeah, and like the term we were talking about before, meeting people where they are, it's like, that's fine as a headline.
Yeah,
I don't mind cliches like that if they're headlines, but in EBE, for like an EBE facilitator, meet people where they are. Okay, for how long? In what ways? With what exceptions? So if they drink a bottle of wine every night, is that okay? We're going to meet that where it is? Is that okay for a month, a year, 2 years? If they're in a long-term codependent romance, are we going to challenge that? Or wait until they realize it's not serving them? What if they never do? So it's not nearly as simple as, if you can say it in one phrase, that ain't it. It's not that simple.
That's absolutely right. And I love that you at least brought in the breadth of neuroatypicality here. Those of us that are neuroatypical, we blurt. People on the spectrum, they blurt with no bullshit. They don't have filters to take care of other with the impact. And that's hard to work through, because they don't get their impact. Asperger's spectrum autists who are high functioning, they don't get their impact, and they've got to learn that impact.
Yeah.
Believe me, we're not saying they don't have to learn that. That's their challenge. But on the positive side, they just smell language bullshit a mile away, because they're so lean in blurting. Oh, you look really terrible today. Did you know that? I mean, that's a classic autistic spectrum thing. And then they're being really honest, and they think they're giving a compliment when they say that, because it's true. It's an honest. They really look bad, and they don't say, "Oh, you look a little tired, but otherwise beautiful as usual."
Right.
They just can't do that.
Yeah.
So there is a plus side to being on the spectrum, but it's got to be, for sure. We have to learn about impact.
Yeah, and the more I'm in my heart, the less I have to translate people's words into better words.
Yes.
But for a long time, that's what I had to do. And it resulted, I had protectors who hated people because of it, because my experience was, or his experience was, that people are never saying what they mean, and I have to figure out what they really mean, because otherwise reality is unsafe. That was sort of the formula. Yeah. So now that I can feel people better, I don't have to translate nearly as much, but sometimes I still have to. And I don't enjoy that, but Otherwise, I'd be playing victim. Like, so
Absolutely.
I've got a good
So
vocabulary.
look what, you just see how Joseph on the fly decoded himself. You see that? And you make a beautiful point here that's pursuant to almost every facet of identity, no matter the hood. And that is that the wavelengths that carry emotivity are far longer wavelengths. They're not staccato this way with the high, like this, they're like this. So they carry more information per unit expression. So when Joseph says the more he learns to come from emotivity, the less his mind has to work, it's because he's getting all this information.
And if the person is feeling what they're saying or feeling what they're feeling, then it puts more meaning in the words. Even if the words aren't accurate in the domain of words, I can still feel what they mean. And sometimes, interestingly, sometimes it's like, oh, I feel what you mean, even though I don't quite understand it yet. Which is cool. So it works both ways. If I'm feeling more and they're feeling more, then we're not advocating that everybody has to have, a postdoc vocabulary kind of thing. Not at all.
No.
But being hungry to say what you mean and mean what you say, I would say that's a good thing for Edenists to go for. And there are Yin-in-Service people who I hear regularly talking about their difficulty with words. And I tell you what, I do not care about your difficulty with words. I do not care. That is your green's difficulty. Get over it. You're a human being, and we communicate with words, and you can't opt out of language. It's a truth in service. I have difficulty forming words in service of not having to clarify my spine so that I can communicate well. So I don't accept it.
Oh. Okay. Well, then I'll add my piece in that
I
direction.
thought I would have nothing to say today. Go ahead.
Look at that. But let's reverse it the other way. If emotivity has way more longer wavelengths and therefore more information in the bandwidth per unit, whatever, then it works the other way where I'm talking with someone and I'm feeling them and I am getting energetics coming at me from them that they are completely unaware of, innocently in a lot of cases. And when I had a recent conversation with someone where there was a lot of microaggression, passive aggressivity coming at me.
It was more than micro, passive, yes.
Joseph was witness to it, and that person had no idea that they were generating that. So that's the other side of forming relationality that makes it harder to get used to and lonelier for feelers, not feelers and feelings, but emotive-based information, to have relationships, because you're constantly picking up way more information than the person knows they're putting out. And what do you do in that moment? If I was a facilitator, I'd have one kind of reactivity to it. If it's not a facilitation moment, then I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, because I either out them to what's coming out of them that they don't know is coming out of them, which is going to sound judgmental. It's going to sound like, well, you're projecting that on me,
and not really appropriate, right? You don't know where they are in their process, whether they're ready to get that.
So sometimes that ambiguity, if it goes on and on and on for more than 10 minutes, then there's parts of me that in gold land or gold in the worst case, green and gold mixing, where I lose patience with a person who's not really getting what they is coming out of them. And it's not my place to tell them in that frame.
And the way upstream from this is the value that we hold that people are responsible for the contents of their unconscious, which most people unconsciously don't hold. They don't ask themselves the question, but they unconsciously think, as evidenced by one of my most loathed excuses, I didn't intend to hurt you.
Yes.
Or I didn't intend to make you feel that way, or I didn't intend for this to happen. We wholesale reject that. We say people do exactly as their conscious and or unconscious wants, and are responsible for the results. So when you experience that coming at you and you're talking with someone who doesn't subscribe to that necessarily. Yes. What do you do?
Yeah. In that interaction, I was just nauseated because I was getting so much information that what was off the radar screen for this person who's a beautiful person, and I couldn't endure anymore. So I had to make some, and that was on me. I couldn't go past 10 or 12 minutes of on and on and on. So I had to make a boundary. What's the specific question here? And so, and that was the best I could do, because the parameter agreement there is not facilitation. If I was facilitating, I would have had a whole other orientation. But this is a whole different context. Yeah. So here's where it really causes relationality shifting, when you learn to operate on emotive bandwidths of information, not mental bandwidths of information. It makes relationality crazy making for one who's got it way sophisticatedly and someone who doesn't have it at all.
Yeah, and I spoke to someone who was also a witness of that, who did not perceive that. To me, it was an energetic ice pick you were being stabbed with.
Yes.
And one other person I know for sure agreed with that. And this other person I was talking to didn't see that at all.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And so
that's data.
Yeah, that's data. Yeah. And had a reaction to your response that was a little critical. And I was like, oh, I thought Stace's reaction was actually quite measured and with, what's the word? Not withhold, restrained, not that. Measured, I guess, is the best.
Measured is a good word.
Yeah, it's not what I mean, but see, that's part of the live by the sword thing. Now, it's bothering the hell out of some part of me that I can't come up with the word that I really mean. Measured, isn't it? Damn it, missed that one. Okay. So yeah, and so someone who, like you said, the more you do your own inner work, the more you perceive your own unconscious motives, because they become conscious. Yes. And then the horrific and wonderful byproduct is you start experiencing other people's unconscious motives in ways you literally cannot conceive of.
And that you cannot not know.
Yeah.
This is not just, people think that's just third eye, which I have gifts that way, but we're talking about another whole heart. It's a fourth thing where you're feeling the emotive virtual ice picks. Fourth chakra, sorry.
Specify.
Coming at me, that was not, I didn't need my third eye to experience this.
Yeah, it's as real as being hit physically. That's how real it is. And
for someone, go ahead, yeah.
And then there's that therapy versus EBE thing. It's like, okay, are we coming from everything is okay and we're creating a safe space, which EBE identity does not subscribe to, adults, safety for adults. And so we don't create a romper room, padded room for people to be however they are. But if they mistake EBE for therapy, they're going to have an expectation of, quote, emotional safety, which we sort of approximate and allow for in the beginning, but eventually it's time to put your big boy or girl pants on and become an adult, where if you energetically stab someone and you don't realize it, well, it's going to get reflected back to you in some way. And if that is difficult for you, then deal with it. It's like, that's just cause and effect. Right.
Or to be the most generous, identity is not your paradigm. No one says anyone has to put on their big boy and big girl pants in any other paradigm. We are proud of that. We want to help people who want to dig it all the way down to the bottom. And so, if that's not your cup of tea, then that should be. I couldn't take someone's money in facilitation if I didn't, for example, give the me space, we space thing fairly early on, because I'm not serving their highest good with that. And identity's metaphysical picture, you see. And since most people don't get metaphysics, they don't understand, they over my lifetime, a long lifetime, they don't interpret the layers that I have to go through to communicate something with someone who's not in the same ballpark in that way, which is easy to do in facilitation, but hard to do in any other dynamical relationality, because you don't have permission to hey, do you know that you've got microaggression or aggression coming out at me? Is there a big authority issue in your family?
Mm-hmm.
There's a way to, I just want to let you know that's coming out at me. And maybe you want to sniff that and see if you think I'm right there. That's a
Mm-hmm.
facilitation thing.
Yeah.
When it's not a facilitation moment, what am I supposed to do
Well,
here?
and here's the Yin-in-Service thing. If you do that
Yeah.
outside of facilitation, I'd call that
Yes.
caretaking.
Absolutely.
And we don't do that.
Absolutely.
It's just like, it's a different kind of relationship. You don't have that
Care-
responsibility.
Exactly. Caretaking in our world is toxic kindness.
Mm.
Toxic kindness. People, once I used that with someone, he's never heard the word toxic in front of kindness. Right. Bad metaphysics there.
Uh-huh.
To a metaphysically adept person, caretaking is toxic caring, toxic kindness. It's not serving the person to lullaby them like a baby if they're wanting to be fully authenticated. So we go way
is
behind.
cool, though. I dig that.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
With a K.
We go way beyond Maslow's self-actualization. We are into self-authentication at the level of soul's translation through the human. This is a whole other world. And if a facilitator isn't preparing that person, their facilitant, for that other whole world, basically from the beginning, after letting lots of stuff land, but then, okay, how are we going to organize what you need?
Yeah,
That's metaphysics.
It's a red pill. It's not taking the blue pill and making your life better. That's not what it is. It's exiting the current version of reality for a deeper one.
Beautiful to say, if you haven't gotten this by now, if you haven't read any of the stuff or didn't listen to the podcast, this is identity rejects happiness.
Yes.
It rejects happiness as the most virulent drug of the human race, the seeking of happiness. Happiness is toxic in 85% of the cases, the way it's utilized. We're looking for realness, not happiness. If you're not interested in realness, then go to Course in Miracles. They'll give you all the wonderfulness and love stuff that's going on, but it won't.
They will add sainthood to your control parts like you can't believe.
Exactly. Oh, that's a great way to put it. Because undifferentiatedly, you're going to love what Course in Miracles says, but you're green. Again, the distinction every moment, the difference between the protector eye and the soul eye. We're after the soul eye, not mollycoddling. Even though we support and empathize with the green, we can't let it, in the name of kindness, let it just take over the person if it's in facilitation.
And one thing I want to add here before I forget, on the most recent second Sunday for members only. So here's what you missed out on. Here's a little teaser.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Good.
I can't go small enough, I think, I wanted to find a clip to release, but I don't know if I'm going to get to that. But one of the things we talked about was this, and I was talking about how somewhere in the last year or two, year and a half, I started to, without any intention or desire to feel this, I feel caretaking as invasive and grabby.
Oh, yeah.
And so here's a great example of where the framework sometimes needs to precede the experience. So if someone is being kind and sweet with you, and you know that's easy for them to do, see if you can feel into it. Are they, especially if they're coming at you in some unself-interested, quote unquote, way, and especially if you know they're a 2 or a 9, can you feel on any deep level that they're actually gaining something from that feels icky? I feel it as it feels like a hand reaching into the sound hole of a guitar and pulling on loose strings in my 3rd chakra. That's how it feels to me.
Whoa, dude.
Every time it feels like pulling on strings and this it's like, oh, stop. And there's a trigger in there because that's how my mother fed off of me. But there's also truth where there's this icky, nauseating sort of like, whoa, you're trying to take something from me that isn't yours.
Yeah. And if you haven't, I had a mother that did the same thing. That's another commonality we had. You can feel icky about it and have that be a positive digestion of that. even if you haven't healed it all the way, you can discern a bandwidth of the icky, even though you know it's a trigger for you. The bottom line in this whole discussion is every single impression or thought or word you ever say in any moment, everything is important.
Yeah.
Everything. And we have a way to navigate through all that complexity. So if you don't question every feeling, like we said last time, especially your gut feeling, you've got to be open and curious about every single feeling or meaningful thought that you have.
Well, and I've heard you say that many times over many years, but what occurs to me now is I don't have to so much do that anymore. It already happens. And
yes, that's right.
I don't know if I would have gotten that. I mean, that's sort of the idea that an emotionally mature person just automatically does that. But because we process reality emotively first and all that other stuff second, when you do that significantly, it's just like walking down the street and seeing because your eyes are open. And if your heart is open, you are feeling other people and yourself. It's not about having to turn it on, although in the beginning it does and helps to have some intention and practice to do it. But the idea is you eventually authenticate such that you are consciously and cognitively processing reality emotionally. You're registering that you're processing reality emotionally. So you don't have to do it the same way you don't have to look when you open your eyes. It's the light comes to you.
Oh, that's a great way to say it. Wait,
let me use my eyes and see where the road is. No, they just do that.
That's right. It becomes second nature. And what Joseph is describing here is also a function of what's happened since 2012.
Yeah, for sure.
That yin divin is wind is at our back. So time is compressing in some domains and expanding in others, our perception of time. But what's happening is that in the end, what Joseph just described is life starts being your facilitator, just like we said earlier, where you don't have to think about it anymore. It's like a surgeon who goes through 6 years or 8 years of anatomy and physiology, so they don't have to remember it all when they're on the operating table. It becomes second nature. Same principle here. Life is creating the rapidity of life being our facilitator. So we're evolving and trying to always play catch up with that. Like Joseph said, you don't even have to do this kind of a lot of stuff like we had to do before because the wind is filling our sails without us really tracking it.
Yeah, which is wonderful and sometimes overwhelming and difficult. But for whom would it be overwhelming and difficult, right?
Only the green, folks.
Yeah.
Only the green. Every feeling you have or opinion, is this green or gold? If someone had the opinion I was being harsh with that sweet person, how might I be filtering that? Do that first. You got to learn to do that first in some way before you make it the other person's problem. Why am I perceiving this in this way? Where's my curiosity? And that's proactivity.
And there's another way in which you used to call EBE emotional Zen. It's another way in which it's easy to confuse EBE and other therapeutic modalities because it looks like therapy, but it's not. It's a rigorous dharma that is supposed to infiltrate every aspect of your life. It's not talking to your facilitator every couple of weeks and venting how hard a time you're having and going back to your life and it being the same. That's not what it is. It can be like that in the beginning, maybe, or sometimes, depending, but that's
episodically,
sure.
Yeah.
So did we even get through any of this on the list? I think you added one. I'm so ridiculous. I'm like, I think I have nothing to say, Stace. You're going to have to lead today, and now I can't shut up. Okay, number 1 on the list. We're 55 minutes or 30 minutes in. That was number 0. I do that a lot with my list. When I add something later, that was 0.
All right.
Number 1, indulgence of superficial feelings over facts and deeper issues.
Oh, beautifully said. And now, there's not one bit of lipo fat in those words. Every one of those things unfolds perfectly following the one before it and linking to the one after it.
Indulgence, by the way, that was the word about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago when this whole Yin-in-Service started to dawn for me. That was the entree to it. It was someone that I knew who was quite indulgent of superficial feelings, and I could sense there was, the green was empowered by the legitimization of emotion in service of, I can feel whatever I want and you can't argue with that feeling, and it doesn't matter what actually happened. And that's woke right there.
That's woke, exactly. Yeah. My feeling, and that's so narcissistic. Yeah. It's so overcooked. It's, oh God, we're progressives, social progressives, but woke is a heroine, caring about other people on heroin. So superficial feelings over facts and deeper issues. You want to stay with the flesh and skin of an issue and not the bone. And the bone is where the issue is solved, not at the level. The symptom is muscle and skin, but bone is cause. Identity wants to look at causal domains that are unconscious to us, not treat effects with an open heart of, oh, poor baby.
Yeah, and this is where it's tricky because we're talking about the distinction between energetic feelings and deeper emotions. We're interested in emotions, and they are valid and need to be felt, but it's not a black and white thing. An energetic feeling, a superficial feeling, is an emotion that's gone through a green filter and has been yangified. And it goes
great
out.
Way to put it.
It doesn't go in. It's non-vulnerable. And so it can be really dicey telling the difference, because sometimes they feel in you the same, but it takes a lot of work to be able to discern between rage and anger, for example. One is green and one is gold. And sometimes it's mixed up. But if there's not a meta of like, oh, am I indulging a superficial feeling here, which often looks like victimhood, or is this actually an emotion? Because green is happy for you to spin in superficial feelings. It wins. It gets relieved, it gets ventilated until the next time the same damn thing comes up because you haven't processed the emotion. So that's a big one, indulgence. And again, back to the marker thing, where these are things Yin-in-Service people do with 2 or more markers usually. Victimhood is next on the list, and by that we always mean playing victim, not true victimhood. Victimhood and not taking responsibility for one's contribution to any particular situation. Anything you want to add to that?
Yes. I think you mentioned it in a later moment here. Anything that follows the phrase "you made me feel," ... right? No one makes you feel anything. No one makes you feel anything. If I stab myself with a knife, the way we're conditioned, the knife hurt me. But it's not the knife that gave me the pain. It's my nerves that gave me the pain, not the knife. Victimhood sees the perpetrator and not the fact that your reaction to it could be 10 different things to being stabbed. Oh God, that point was really itchy. I don't mind a little prick of blood. I'm not playing victim to someone just. It's a whole other orientation. It's our own nerves that cause us pain, not another person. Nobody can make you feel anything that you don't already feel in some way.
And a really good example of this in our society is the term shaming, fat shaming, or you shamed that person. We would say that's not a thing.
No.
That's like summarily dismissed, not an aspect of reality. You can say something that is green, that is insensitive, that triggers the person's shame. And this is where I love your distinction between responsibility and responsivity. So if you say something to someone and they feel shame as a result, you would take responsibility by Goldwood, looking at what might have been off in that was undue or a little bit cruel, but you would not take responsibility for the fact that they're feeling shame in that moment. The shame's already there.
Yes. A person wouldn't say you shame me unless they already felt shame.
Yeah.
If someone says, accuse me of being a child molester, what, I'm going to feel shame about that? It's just
Yeah.
not a reality factor. There's a beautiful example of this. Bree's son, my stepson, and the three of us went on a walk on the beach on Mother's Day the other day. And there was a guy that I'd never seen a belly like this on a
Uh-huh.
man. And my first reaction was, oh, dude, no,
Mm.
no, silently. I didn't, I just went, oh, dude, no. I felt how he felt in that body that
Hmm.
he just normalized. That is, I mean, what his heart has to do to press blood through all that lipo weight in there.
Yeah.
Uh, if what happens here is you can, just because you discern that this person is way overweight doesn't mean you're shaming them. If there's a tone, dude, what are you doing? Okay, I got to take responsibility for that. But
Yeah. But that
oh
doesn't
my God,
cause shame in them. Yeah.
no, you can't cause shame in anyone that isn't already feeling shame. You can't cause anger in anyone or rage, let's say, unless they're already raging in some cosmic way in their world. So anytime, and this is such a cultural meme all over the world. It's an earth meme. You made me feel. Don't you better feel bad for making me feel bad.
Yeah.
Nobody makes you feel anything, everyone. It's your own nerves that are judging you, and then you project the judger on that other person. And they may have a hand in it if they're not really heartful in their tones and their delivery. A discernment, me discerning that man, even if I was talking with him and my eyes glanced down, a discernment only becomes a judgment when you withdraw love from what you just discerned. If you say, I can make someone feel something, then in that way, you're buying into the idea that of supporting of an inhabitation of your unconscious, that
Hmm.
you project victimhood on that perpetrator. So it's, please take this in. Nobody makes you feel anything you aren't already feeling, but they might contribute to it if they're not minding the integrity store of withdrawing love from you for what they discern.
Yeah. One more thing on this, I'm just remembering for some reason, like about 10 years ago in one of my many dating disasters, I got into this conflict with this woman I was dating, and then we were trying to debrief a couple hours later what happened. And at one point, I'll never forget, she said, well, when you said blah, 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 you know, rattled the hornet's nest. And I was like, I don't think I would say this now, but I was like, so you're comparing your consciousness to a group of semi-mindless, aggressive insects? Like, because I didn't, you know, it's a great example of symbolic language, right? So there is no
Right.
hornet's nest. So what are we talking about? Your emotional body, your mind,
Yeah.
like it just can't help but react to stimuli in an aggressive way because it's just operates on pure basic instinct. Like, is that what you think you are? And somehow it's
Oh,
my fault? Oh my God.
oh, there's a sticky one, Joseph. Oh,
Right?
that must have been a hard moment.
It was the end. That was the day I knew it
Yeah.
was over. That was a level of victimhood that I couldn't tolerate. Um, but it was a great
So,
example. Yeah.
so when we say there are no adult victims, this is what we mean. We've just sort of decoded what we mean by the symbolic language. There are no adult victims. Children are the only victims, and they're innocent. And we have an inner innocent wounding too. So if grown-ups just simply never feel like victims, sorry, only teenagers or young children. Teenagers resent it. Young kids just are dying of it already. Or they're already burdened by it. So,
Hmm.
okay.
Next on the list is lack of accountability and responsibility, which is related to victimhood, of course, playing victim.
Yeah. If you don't get that you yourself are creating your emotional reaction triggered by the other person, you're not taking self-responsibility. We're not, when in the foundations class, when we speak that to the premise that we are responsible for the contents of our unconscious, no teaching has ever said that before, that we're responsible for it. This is so off the radar screen of normal human intercourse. It's crazy making. But if you don't take responsibility for your unconscious, all you want to do is play with symptoms for your issues, not get down to the baseline of your causes. So another wrinkle in that too, of lack of accountability and responsibility. Right?
Yeah, I think it's maybe further down. Yeah, I see it's further down. A lot of these are, of course, related. Next one is childlike behavior, tantrums, picking fights.
Mm-hmm.
Yin-in-Service. I mean, there is a youngness to it. It's like yang in service tends to be responsible and accountable because it's drawing from more directly from will, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's a little bit cleaner.
Yeah, it's yangic. So children are more yin than adults, and so yin in service, it's part of that indulgence of superficial feelings that tends to create that.
Please make me feel better.
Yeah. And if you don't, I'll punish you.
Yes,
exactly. Present you. Yeah. Inability to take criticism or be reasoned with.
Yeah. Nobody likes to be criticized harshly, but there's a way to, quote unquote, criticize someone's, hate the sin, but love the sinner. Even Yeshua taught that 2,000 years ago. The distinction between the inability, what role criticism can take, positive or negative. A critic, we have to learn to be our own self-critic. When you learn how to be your own self-critic, always curious about all of your thoughts and feelings and what's going on, you never feel criticized because you're always going, and I'm not 100% about that with that yet, but when you start reversing the 2/3, 1/3, you really get a whole new take on life, right? So if I'm constantly taking responsibility for my unconscious, all I ask is not toxic kindness, but some sort of even neutral respect. Hey, Stace, have you looked into how at this in all your work that you're having a da-da-da-da right now because of a da-da-da-da? Oh, if you talk to me that way, I'm yours.
That's curious and warm.
Exactly. But if you're saying, how dare you think that because you're the leader here, you're beyond criticism?
You lost me at how dare you. I don't know what that means.
I'm out of the relation in that space in that moment because I'm not treating you that way, and nobody deserves to be treated that way. Nobody.
And related to the how dare you, this is another sort of related lack of rigor thing. When people ask questions that are not actually the questions they're asking. So the how dare you question is really cliche. I don't even know what that question means. Like, are you saying like, how do I have the courage to do that? Like, you don't really mean that, nor want me to answer that question, you know? So one of the coolest things I remember from the advanced course in landmark education was this moment that was so cool where someone did that kind of passive aggressive, energetic stabbing thing. And I'll never forget, the leader was so graceful and she just paused and she was so still and had so much poise. And she sort of looked down for a moment and stroked her chin and said, "That's not a question. That's a conclusion in process."
Oh,
and I was like, oh man, that is the best distinction.
Conclusion in process. Oh my God. That is exactly right.
I still use that one today. And so when the words and the structure of the sentence looks like a question, but you can't feel curiosity in it, don't answer. Because you're not in reality then you're validating the green superficial ruse, and instead of getting to what are you really asking here? And they would say often in Landmark, what's the question behind that question? I've heard you say that too.
Yeah, well, that's exactly describes the earlier scenario that you were witness to. There was a question that was not a question. It was pre-concluded. There was a conclusion that this person didn't know they were even had pre-concluded. I'm going to remember that. That would have helped me the other day. That's not a question. That's a conclusion in process. Right. So,
yeah.
Okay.
And that's part and parcel of being able to feel motivations. And
Yes.
the better you get at this, the more you hear people very often don't, I'd say more often than not, outside of EBE people, the questions they ask are not the questions that they're asking. And there's this joke, and you hear comedians talk about it a lot, like when your girlfriend asks, "Are you hungry?" what they're really saying is, "I'm hungry."
Yes.
And like, "Do you want Italian food?" And they're really saying, "I want something different, and I want you." Like, yeah, I won't play those kinds of games. It's just too confusing. Okay.
So look at just one last point there. Take a moment to feel into how what Joseph just said, that he won't abide with that anymore. What the capital L lonely factor in the world of people's completely inauthentic communications, how lonely that makes you if you're in on the under that sees the meta with all that. You despair ever meeting someone who could be an intimate partner. You despair, like I've had in my life, very few close friends at all, especially men. All my friends were almost always women. For that reason, men they're just men.
They tend to be less aware of their subtleties and emotions that are driving their behavior. So.
Yeah, women more so. That opens up other can of worms for women, like you said, if there's in the marker, second or third marker.
They tend to indulge, but at least they know what they feel on a superficial level, or the men were just like, "Oh, I'm just kidding. When I called you an asshole, I was just joking around," and then they hit you or squeeze your hand so hard it hurts for like an hour. That kind of shit.
Oh God. So it's hard to get along with the average human race once the more you self-authenticate emotively and soulfully. Soulfully self-authentication is going to make you way lonelier. You can't play the games anymore. And you just have to learn to bear that, because unconsciously you were lonely already and just didn't know it.
And there are things
will push you in contact with that.
Yeah, and it's not like you're just deposited to this hopeless place. There's a whole set of learnings about how to relate, meet people where they are, but without selling out your truth, but feeling everything you feel, but not necessarily saying everything that you feel. It's a whole gambit in of itself that I've learned a ton from. And it's about relating with people to the degree the relatedness is there, and not any less and not any more. That's how I look at it. It's like really being with reality.
Yeah, beautifully said. I just got a third eye hit of a listener who's going to hear what you just said and go, I think it's a she, and out there in audience land, she's thinking to herself, how am I going to remember all this shit? And
you don't.
Because and what we're saying here is you don't have to remember, don't even try. That's the natural sequela to emotive soulful self-authentication. It just becomes second nature. And so don't try to remember all this complexity, you guys. We're just illuminating the complexity it takes to become emotively self-authentic. Very different than self-actualize.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Next one.
The next one, lowered standards for healthy relationships in the name of maintaining harmony and longevity.
Capital C, codependency.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a can of worms. I mean, we talked about that in previous podcasts, but we're talking about, lest we forget, because I'm kind of forgetting, that all of this is in the context of, my moment got bigger in the last few days. Like, where are we? It's like being in the middle of a song listening and be like, who sings this? What was the beginning of the song? Why did I come into this room? We're talking about Yin-in-Service. So everybody does this, we would say, but Yin-in-Service will sometimes, even for people who've done a fair amount of EBE, it adds a kind of hanging on, because, and that's what's, one of the things that came out while I was writing this thing that I didn't really see before. It's like the contextual challenge. And again, I don't remember anything we talked about in the first part, so maybe we should call this part 1 of 1 and 2, 0. I don't know how to call it. It's the second part of part 1.
Second part of part 1. There you go. That's it.
Maybe we're saying all the same things again. I don't know, but the trickiness here that's worth mentioning is that because kindness and love and relationality and compassion, which is one of the three aspects of soul, right? Joy, sorrow, and compassion. Right. Because these are destinations and embodiment goals for identity, they're the juiciest truths in service that a yin person can do. Yes.
Yeah.
But one of the things I wrote
low-hanging fruit.
Is low-hanging fruit. Like, well, I'm already pretty kind. Great. I'll just keep doing that. That's different. That's different. Yeah. And
that's different.
And there's a lot of the Yin-in-Service people in EBE will look toward people like you and I who have none of the Yin-in-Service markers and go, oh, well, they're kind of hard around the edges, or, can be excessively opinionated. No, we look at you and wonder where your spine is, because all heart and no spine is a pool of guts on the floor.
Yeah.
And that's what we're calling for here.
Yeah, and what you're also speaking to is how deeply we're culturally conditioned to have Yin-in-Service without the bones. Where's the spine? You see, so we're going to look, since we don't have any of the markers. We're going to look harsh. But wait, maybe that's because we're offending the odor in your nose that you've gotten conditioned to, that kindness should start every moment.
Right.
Not necessarily. So if you got to know us, you would know that our hearts are just as large as our brains. And we can't deny our brains, but when brain is lots more developed than what we would call heart development, you're an arrogant asshole. If you're all the way in heart, but you're not circumscribed by clarity and metaphysics, you're going to be guts on the floor. What's the middle? You know what? We're trying to make the middle livably embodied. And there are moments both of us make mistakes, but those who know us know that our hearts are just as big as our brains. And just because we look harsh and overthinking things doesn't mean we are.
Yeah, and here's a great place to say something. I was talking to someone recently that I was been getting to know for the first time, and they are a podcast listener. And in our conversations, they said at a certain point, like, "Oh, you're different than the you on the podcast." And I'm like, yeah, that's the teacher me, of course.
Yes, right,
so
exactly.
We're using a lot of words. We're talking about paradigms and frameworks. This is, and the podcast I do with Eric, because he's so yin and so sweet and has just magic in that domain. He does warm me up in some ways, and that's cool. And I like that. And we find a kind of middle in that way. But we're also not talking about really rigorous metaphysics usually when we talk. We're talking about the experience of EB, and that's been really cool. And we've done 2 interviews with people in the process, and they have those episodes have a really different vibe. So yes, I'm not just going around whiteboarding people's metaphysics in the banks and grocery stores. It's like, this is just one domain. I really have a lot of range, believe me, and so does Stace. We're in paradigmatic processing mode, and getting down really important stuff to help people with it. So it's not that we have just these big meta brains and that's who we are.
And so a historical narrative overlay here is that the world is either sick in Yin-in-Service or sick in Yogic cruelty.
Yeah.
It's really a war going on for the planet's collective consciousness. What's going to win here? We're in a transition away from Yogic cruelty. But that's why this topic is so important, Joseph, because with Yin Divin behind the wheel, so to speak, what we're aiming for is healthy Yin, not unhealthy, toxic Yin. So in that direction, it's being illuminated for us what the toxic versions are of love and kindness.
And that's
what we're targeting.
And that's what happened to the progressive left. So right now, the leading edges of the parties, it's Trumpism, unhealthy self-interest, and you don't get us started, versus wokeism. It's toxic yang versus toxic yin. Well, how perfect. Yes. I mean, you can't make this shit up. Right?
No, people ask me when Trump won, how could divine being let this happen? I said, are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
The handwriting is on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Gandhi used to say even, it is a historical truth. Just look at history. Despots always fall. They always fall. A lot of times replaced by another despot.
Mm-hmm.
But there is an underground goodness driving everything that if you think you can't feel that, you're going to get despairing. But illuminating toxic yin is only illuminatable because it's going in the direction of healing all the toxic, religiously conditioned, fake forms of the use of love and kindness and compassion. The fake forms. That's why this topic has surfaced now and came down like a tsunami to our beloved Joseph here.
Yeah, I know. I'm still hungover from writing 18 pages in 2 days over the weekend. Exhausted.
That happened to me exactly with the Soul Species book. 17 or 19, I think, was an odd number in one day.
Oh my gosh!
Without any editing. So
that's the crazy thing, that I didn't think it could organize. Like, I knew I could write like that, but I didn't think it would happen in an organized way. And that told me there was some bigger intelligence than the local me operating, because it was not just writing, it had a picture of how it would all hang together.
It was self-organizing beyond our brain's ability to track.
That was cool, but also exhausting and probably triggering. Next one, defaulting to yin. I like that term, defaulting to yin instead of considering that a yang expression is appropriate. And you just mentioned that. I wanted to unpack that with sentence you said, not necessarily every moment should begin with kindness. And that was a really good eyebrow raising one. Do you want to say more about that? What you mean by that?
Yeah. If you're conditioned, and you have no way out of that conditioning of doesn't identity teach love first, will second, personal will second?
What does that mean in application?
In application, what that means is you've got to love yourself and the other person enough not to give them a hot, steaming, toxic form of yin love.
Oh, this is right. So implicit, I didn't even think of that. Love first to a yin-in-service person is love other first.
Yes.
They implicitly exclude themselves from the love, which of course we know is impossible because there's no such thing as non-self-interest.
No such thing as non-self-interest. Another assumption is we'll have a class in the foundation class, right? That's another piece of the puzzle here. Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't start with a toxic form of love if you love that person. And so what you'll do is you keep your tones. You can keep your tones loving, but you've got to use the yang language to framework the moment if you want to really care for the beautiful gold that's underneath the green fusion at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really there's a beautiful way you put that there. Not necessarily start with kindness if the person neurotically needs it first. Mm-hmm. And you can tell the difference when to do that. You don't have to think about it. You can feel it in these bandwidths, these long bandwidths of emotivity that have all that information.
Yeah, and if there's a little bit of edge in it and someone says like, well, it feels like there's some edge in what you're saying. It's like, yeah, well, I mean, this is one, oh my God, I've especially...
Go ahead. I know where you're going.
So many times, like with people who play victim and do yin-in-service in general, I find myself in this position of like, I say it kindly once, they don't listen. I say it kindly a different way. I make sure to talk about the emotional impact that it's having on me. I make another pass at it. Then I get a little frustrated and they go, whoa, why are you coming at me with all this edge? Because you didn't fucking hear me the first 3 times. That's why. That's a reasonable edge. That's a reasonable yang. I turn the volume up from 3 to 5 because you're not listening and I'm a human being and that's frustrating. If I don't do that, I've become your facilitator.
Yes.
And then you'll authority project in a different way.
Yeah,
and
that's a trap. That is such a common trap. When you try first, and there's no antenna in that person to receive the kindness of what you're trying to do, because they've already concluded there's nothing you're going to say that's going to change their mind. So you try 2 or 3 passes, and then frustration. Then what they'll do, if you put that whole thing in a gestalt, there's 15% edge after trying the other 85%, but they only focus on the 15% edge. They don't see what you did already because they were already concluded in their opinion.
Yeah, it's a form of gaslighting.
It's a form of gaslighting. There's no relationality in that. And yet they think they're in the driver's seat teaching you something about relationality.
Right, because they have an a priori notion that every moment should start with kindness. Right? Because we're the Judeo-Christian love and service, Yin-in-Service, whatever. I need to feel emotionally safe. And when you brought it with that kind of energy, I get to summarily dismiss every part of it instead of considering, boy, I'm feeling a little uneasy. Why are you so frustrated? And I'll also consider what you're saying. How hard is that? It's not that hard.
Only a child needs to feel emotionally safe in adult contexts. And a grown-up doesn't need to feel emotionally safe because they've self-authenticated enough to feel safe already. Yeah. So you calling for emotional safety is a little child in you screaming that you better know this is not you.
Yeah, and that's where it's really tricky because a facilitator has a job to care about the emotional safety of that person's parts.
Absolutely.
But if someone... But in pure relationality... Right. But as soon as they say that they want me to make them feel emotionally safe, we're actually not peers in that moment anymore.
No, you're the authority, you're the facilitator.
But then they're still relating to me as a peer. Oh, man, it's just that kind of stuff.
Don't get me started on peer-based facilitation. Don't even get me started. It is so full of black holes that are usually off the radar screen. I just can't even go there at the moment.
I don't know if that's on the list here, but it's implied. We'll do one more, I guess. Let's do one more.
Well, 2 max.
2, okay. There is no Guess the Guru. I'm not in a playing mood today. I couldn't.
While we're doing this series, I already assumed.
It didn't feel
we're
right.
in a direct. Yeah. Okay.
So fusion to this is a longer one. Fusion to an identity around being sweet and soft, which is indicative of a noun self attached to a state of consciousness, rather than having a full range of human soulful expression. And this,
go ahead. Yeah.
This comes directly, I spoke to this already before. It was that insight I had of like, wait, why are all these yinic people so proud of their sweet softness? They were like that before starting EBE. And okay, cool. But like, I worked my ass off to be able to feel people and my own emotions. I started out hard as a rock. And so I trust the kindness that comes out of me and the compassion in me because I didn't have it before, like at all. Oh my God, you knew me when I was 28.
I do, yeah.
Did you really think I could do this work?
Oh, yeah.
You saw my soul capacity.
I saw your soul. But
without that, I was not a candidate. Technically not. No, I was hard as nails. So a lot of people unconsciously have identities around this kind of kindness stuff. And then, like I said before, they confuse that with, I'm embodying the destination of this paradigm. Not if you started out that way. It's presumed green until proven otherwise.
Right. Exactly. I love that you partially frame that as a noun self that is over-attached to a prior version of itself. It's not open to the actual. Our eyes, our egos, what we call our egos, are verbs. They're not nouns. You won't ever enlightened in the sage way in identity. if while you relate to your ego as a noun enough to want to kill it or transcend it, you don't transcend a flow. You transcend a rock. So
and
there's
that's a
nothing to do.
and that's a confusion in sagehood as well, in a lot of forms of sagehood, where people are
Right.
cultivating, like Tibetan Buddhism, as you once called the McDonald's of Buddhism or something, where there's this idea of cultivating kindness. I don't think, from what I can intuit, the Buddha would not be into cultivating a state, practicing a way of being. What? That's all nounification.
Exactly. And what the current Dalai Lama said, just act enlightened. Just
What
start
does
to
that
act
mean?
enlightened.
Because
that was
enlightenment
a
is a set
direct
of
quote.
qualities?
Yes. Qualities, not unconscious motives and soul deep blocks to that.
Right. The non-dual, which has no features and you can't say anything about it, but an enlightened person who somehow has some kind of non-relationship with it, they have a set of qualities, and it's kindness and niceness and easygoingness and going with the flow, because that's what the non-dual does? No, it has no qualities. It's the capacity for everything. What?
It's the pre-dual non-dual, we call pre-dual, is a capacitation. It's not a quality. It's the thing that allows a quality. And if you confuse those two, you become unenlightenedly enlightened.
Attachment to unattachment. And then there's a set of qualities, and there's clothing and jewelry also that come with that, available at the head shop or a metaphysical bookstore near you.
I had.
Go ahead.
Did that complete?
Yeah.
I just want to give an example of that. You had to mention clothes. So I don't know. Just before I met you, before the turn of the century. Jesus Christ.
I know. 25 years ago.
I was giving a presentation somewhere. I was in a school, rented a gymnasium in the local school in Bend, and I forget what the topic was, but near the end of it, it was talking about how to integrate spirituality. I remember that to humanness in some way. And a person raised their hand and said, "Hey, can I offer a positive reflection for you?" And of course, I said, "Of course, please do." He said, "I think you're missing the secret to getting this paradigm of yours out into the world."
Uh-huh.
Lay it on me.
Yeah, right answer.
You dress like a human and try to be and give off spiritual teaching. You need to reverse that. Dress like a spiritual person in robes and stuff, and then be human. That way, the message will be, "Whoa, that guru is so down to earth." Instead of you dressing like a regular person and sounding spiritual, people don't know what to do with it. They want to see the accoutrements. They want to see the image.
That would be better marketing.
It would be better. And I had to acknowledge. I said, that is really a good observation. And if I had the real feeling, a non-strategic reason to wear a robe, which I like, I've robe a couple of times, I've had them on, and I love how it feels. But if it's strategic with that end in mind, then it's from my sentinel, I used to call it, we used to call
protectors sentinels. They were
sentinels, guardian of the wall. It was a reasonable name, but it doesn't catch its real function. So I had to answer him with, that's a strategic truth that probably I get rewarded for, but I can't do it. I can't do it.
Yeah, and that's a whole rabbit hole. I'm pretty sure we've never talked about this, but
no,
I was just sort of looking at my own relationship to dress there, because I mean, there's so much that's not neutral about what you wear and how you look. I remember once you said something, my mind is so funny of the things it captures that you say. You said that hair is never neutral. Like how your hair is. It's never neutral. It always is an expression of something.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Like, identity fashion advice. Like, what would that look like? If identity had a fashion teaching, it would be decidedly anti-self-image, right? It couldn't be about promoting. It would have to be what clothing serves to express how you experience yourself on the inside.
Exactly.
Not less or more than you experience yourself on the inside.
Exactly. And as the only robe direction I go is I like tab collar shirts. I liked them since I was 15 years old, not the flaps with the buttons on them. That's quite Eastern Chinese.
Yeah, I like them too.
Yeah. I don't know why I like them, but it makes me feel like me way more than collared button downs.
Well, those are very corporate.
Yeah, I can't wear polo shirts. I can't wear shirts here.
The dentist thing. I know what you're gonna say.
No, you tell that part of it.
Button-down shirts with short sleeves.
Yes,
because because that's what dentists wear.
That's what dentists wear. I can't even. I refuse to wear a T-shirt that has any words on it.
I can't do that either. I can't wear anything with words on it. No way.
And my particular complexion thing doesn't make good resonance with heavy patterns, solid colors. The whole. I can wear almost any color except something that reflects my Italian oliveness in my skin. I can't wear certain shades of green, but solid colors, no patterns. I dress how I feel inside, and I can't wear patterns. I can't.
Yeah, I don't like patterns either.
Or words, messages on T-shirts. What? I'm not an advertiser.
Every time I see someone in town with a message on their shirt, I'm shocked every time. Like, what? Especially if it's like a brand, like, why are they advertising for this brand? Like, did they like that brand that much? Or like, I don't get it.
Yeah, and I like to wear kepis, what Bree calls them kepis, like a baseball cap type of hat, but it can never have any words on it. It can't even have the brand on it.
Yeah.
It can't have like a Nike on it. I can't have any words on it. I'm not an advertising. I'm trying to address how I feel inside. So we've actually a lot to say about fashion.
Yeah. Well, I think actually it would be healthier for me to care more about what I wear, maybe, because I really don't. And the expression of my lack of care is that I have, as people know, I live on Maui, so the weather is almost always 85 degrees, and I have about a half a dozen tank tops and 4 pairs of shorts that I like, and I just pick whatever's on the top of the pile, and I put no thought into it whatsoever. And that's what I do. It's a uniform. I think that's how I think of it. Like, that's my Joseph uniform, and I delight in not having to think about it at all. For me, I'm a self-pres 3, so it's a lot about comfort and very little about image.
That's for sure.
Yeah,
that fits.
So
okay,
that's our identity fashion advice.
Yes, and that's actually a kind of funny way to maybe go to closure here.
Yeah, for sure.
Closure.
Oh, I get it. Clothes, which is one of the hardest words for Germans to figure out how to say.
Oh, my beloved, we all kind of make jollies about how she doesn't say clothes like we do in English. She says clothes.
Yeah.
Clothes. And it's so sweet.
It is sweet.
It is.
My other favorite one of hers is, instead of all of the sudden, she says out of the sudden.
Out of the sudden.
Which actually makes more sense.
It does. Actually, right. Her dialect, her English is impeccable in many ways. She can read and write it beautifully. But she's got these little quirks that are so sweet and wonderful.
And on this subject, and for the purposes of entertainment, I've told you this before, Stace. I don't know if I said it on the podcast, but I was in a relationship with a German woman, and I once was saying that, complaining about something being a pain in the ass, and her English was not as good as Bree's at that time. And she said, she looked at me funny, and I realized she didn't know the expression "pain in the ass." And I said it again. It's a pain in the ass. She's like, "What?" It's like, oh, it's an American idiom. It means something is a pain. It's annoying or irritating. Mm-hmm. And she paused and looked kind of off in the distance for a moment and then said, "In the ass?" I almost fell out laughing, having never appreciated the preposition.
I never thought of the "in" being such a significant
there is
part of
penetration in that idiom. It is a pain in your ass.
Oh my God.
That's the beauty of knowing people who speak different languages. I love that. Yeah.
That is a whole other map of experience. Every language gives its own worldview, and it's wonderful to be able to learn with someone. I can't learn a second language after the brutal non-dual I had at my brain circuit for learning a new language. But I can't get quirky about it. I can get phrases and stuff. But
I don't think I could learn a language either. That ship has sailed.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's still a lot more on this list, so let's continue this next time, I guess. And
the reason this really struck me, the symptoms, is because we can use the symptoms to sink in, not drill down. That's another paradigm, drill down.
Yeah.
Sink into the causals that create these lists of symptoms. And that's what we did today. And that's where the rubber meets the road and the Josephism that we abide by in these podcasts. So it's the application.
Yeah, we got about a third of the way through this list, so we'll probably need at least 1 or 2 more episodes, depending.
Yeah.
And if people are curious about this document I'm talking about, I don't know what to do with it yet. So stay tuned and don't ask me for it yet, because I won't know how to answer. I mean, you can, but that's what I'll tell you. I don't know. So stay tuned.
Okay.
And thank you, Stace. Thank you, listeners. And if you're not yet a member, I hope you'll become one. I've got some exciting news about a new platform I'm going to move the podcast to, which is going to add some features and benefits and fun and all of that. And until next time, be real and enjoy and feel everything you feel and whatever.
Nicely said. Thanks, Joseph.
Yeah, thank you. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Heart of Soul podcast. To learn more about Stace Barron and Identity, please visit identity.org. To learn more about Joseph Shapiro, visit clearandopen.com. Until next time, we wish you well on your journey.